Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we are joined by the founder of Great American Shootouts, Mike Kunstadt. Coach K was a high school basketball coach for 26 years at Corpus Christi Carroll and Irving High School. In the mid-70s, he was a charter member of Tabc, Texas Association of Basketball Coaches. In 1988, Coach K retired from coaching and founded Great American Sports Incorporated, which hosted the Gassos and Texas Basketball Review scouting service. He was inducted in the Texas High School Basketball Hall of Fame in 2013. In my opinion, there is no one that's done more for high school players, coaches, and the game of basketball in Texas than Coach Kunstadt. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
Well, Coach, thank you. Thank you so much for giving up your time. This is an absolute honor for me to get to talk hoops with you and share this moment, because you've meant so much to me over the years, as I know you've meant to other coaches and players as well. So thank you so much.
It's been an honor to work with all these coaches throughout the years and see all the players that have done what they've done through the years. So, and you're a special guy too, because you were a very unselfish player, and I always enjoyed watching you play. You could score, but you didn't mind giving up the ball to other people who could score too. It is fun to watch you play at Colony High School under Coach Tommy Thomas.
That's right. Thank you, Coach. And I'll tell you, one of the highlights for me in high school was going to Great American Shootouts, especially the individual ones where we got a jersey, we were put on a team, and we got to play in front of college coaches and in front of you and the rankings that you did. I mean, just like I said, you were so instrumental in I feel like in my high school career.
Well, we were blessed to have a lot of talent here in the state of Texas, and I was very fortunate that a lot of the college coaches believed in what I was doing when I started the scouting service, and it just led from one thing to the other. And that Thompson, Texas, which you have reference to, was a great showcase. We had excellent high school coaches that helped coach the teams, and we had hundreds of college coaches there in attendance, and it was a great event.
Well, Coach, I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience being a charter member of Tabc, which is something I didn't know, being a member of Tabc for so many years now, but you were instrumental in that getting started.
Well, it was back in the early 70s. There was a clinic held in Waco, and that was the one that was the only basketball clinic held in the state of Texas at that time. And there was a group of us coaches would get together and we'd talk X's and O's and hoops. And we said, we need to form an organization. Texas High School Coaches Association is a great organization, but we need to have an organization for basketball coaches. So several of us said, well, let's come up with some ideas. And in the spring of 1975, coaches like Tommy Newman, Ken Cleveland, Mike Smith, Larry Brown, and others, we got together and we talked about forming a charter. And sure enough, TABC formed in 1975 with less than 50 members. But as we well know, it's pushing 6,000 membership now. Puts on clinics. They're in San Antonio, the big one, where we have top high school coaches, college coaches, from not only the state of Texas, but from around the country come in and speak. All-star games for boys and girls. And it's just been a great way for coaches to develop their knowledge and their fundamental knowledge of how they want to coach basketball. And it's just been a great organization. It's been great to me. It gave me a lot of support when I started the scouting service. And it's just a great organization. And like I say, starting from less than 50 members to almost 6,000 now, it's a great compliment to the organization and what they do. Rick Shirley is the executive director now, has done a great job of keeping things rolling forward.
Yeah, I can't imagine how it must feel now going, like you said, in that room with 50 members to now having over 6,000, and just the way that you started something that is helping so many coaches out. I mean, that's just really special.
Well, like I said, the coaches back in that era didn't have an opportunity to learn from other coaches really because clinics were non-existent other than the one in Waco in April. And it just, if you wanted to broaden your knowledge of the game, you needed to either be in a metropolitan area where you could get together with other coaches and share ideas. Some coaches didn't want to share ideas initially. They thought everything was personal and it was a big secret, and you can't share your secrets with others. But as we found out, there's no real secrets in basketball. All of us at some time or another stole things from other coaches, and most of them weren't really stolen. They were shared willingly by most coaches. And just the technology and the learning of the game has just been so much more tremendous. And beginning coach today has a much better opportunity to learn the game than what it was 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, with social media, also with just email and everything that you have now, I had the opportunity to be on the board, TABC board a few years ago. I did a 3-year deal with them, and it was such an honor to be in that room with so many amazing coaches and some of the names that you mentioned earlier. But it was my job to reach other schools that kind of I had been given to reach out to try to bring them on board. What was it like, back before all of the technology we have now with 50 people? What were you guys doing to spread the word that, hey, we have our own organization now?
Well, it was pretty hard. We did have a newsletter that Alton Ballard helped write and got the information out to people, but it was mostly just by word of mouth. You play a coach during the season, you tell them, hey, you need to join TABC, or you go to a ball game or a tournament, and you'd see one of the other coaches and said, you need to join TABC. And it was kind of a rough go, to be honest with you, those first few years. A lot of people just thought, well, I don't want to pay $10, $15, whatever it was, the dues back when you first joined. But what am I going to get out of it? And we said, well, you're going to get a lot out of it. Just got to be part of the foundation, part of the framework to get you going. And it wasn't easy. Like I said, social media today would make it a lot easier to start. But back then, it was just mostly word of mouth.
What point was it when you thought, either through memberships or clinics, okay, this thing is growing and is going to be here for a long time?
Well, I felt like from the very beginning, we felt like it would grow. It just, like I say, everything has this growing pains, and you don't get immediate results, but you have to have confidence it's going to work. And the leadership, Tommy Newman was the first president of TABC, and he was a great leader. And I think he set the tone for the rest of us that followed, that, we're going to be successful. We just need to be patient and work hard at it. And that's what we did. That's what it developed into.
I think it's really important. And part of reason for doing this and having, guys like you, Coach Thomas, JD Mayo, having guys on is that younger coaches get to know the history of Texas basketball, some of the guys that really pioneered and made some of these things happen. And Coach, I'll be honest, until a few months ago, I didn't know your connection with TABC, even though I've known you since the late 90s. And so it's been really amazing to me to learn that not only were you a part of starting TABC or Great American Sports, Gassos and all those, but also TABC, which so many of us love.
Well, I'd say I was blessed. We worked with some great guys in those early years, and the fruition of our work is very evident today.
Then you were a high school coach for 26 years, and I want to go into that a little bit later. And then in 1988, you have the idea to start Great American Sports. Tell me what your vision was for that, and how you got that started.
Well, really, Matt, it started because I had players as well as high school coaches all around the state. We had players we felt like could play at the next level. superstars were being recruited. There's no problem with them. But we had those players that were good enough to play, not major college ball, but lower Division One, NAIA, Division Two, D3, JUCOs, and we just felt like our kids were being deprived of that opportunity because they didn't have any exposure. So I retired from coaching after 26 years, as you mentioned, and decided on to start a scouting service. And so with my contacts through TABC, having been a past president of TABC back in 1984 and 85, I got to know a lot of the coaches around the state, and I presented to the board the opportunity that I felt like was there if I could get TABC support. And not only TABC, but a lot of coaches personally called me and said they'd be more than happy to tell me about things that are happening and players that they have in their area of the state and share information with me. Of course, starting out, you never know whether it was going to succeed or not. I felt confident that it would, but in the summer of 1988, I went to spring leagues, watched games, in particular the Dallas-Fort Worth area where I was located at that time, and evaluated players and started compiling the information. Then in the summer of 1988, went down to Houston where there was a big tournament. I ran into a friend of mine that I coached against when I was down in Corpus Christi. John Hunt was coaching in San Antonio Churchill when I was at Corpus Christi Carroll. And we had played each other on numerous occasions. And he told me, he said, Mike, we got a kid on our summer team that you need to see. I understand you're looking for top players. So I walk into the gym and a bunch of major college coaches there. I figured this must be a pretty big player, pretty important player. Sure enough, first rebound, he takes it off the board, dribbles midcourt, goes behind his back, goes just inside the free throw line and slam dunks it. That player happened to be Shaquille O'Neal. Not hard to pick out top players with like Shaq. And so anyway, I thought, well, it's a good start right there. We put him as one of the top, if not the top player of the state.
Coach, you can't get that one wrong. You can't.
So it wasn't quite that easy from that point on. But anyway, that's how the first summer went, and everything went just really well. And the summer of 1989, I started a shootout, the Great American Shootout, as you mentioned. And we had 41 teams and about 30 college coaches, and I thought that was great. Now we have over 400 teams for that big event in July, close to 400 college coaches, and now 5 events in the summer, 3 events in the spring, 3 events in the fall, and then classics. And like we did with you, Matt, we had the tops in Texas and have camps going on too. So Great American Shootout, I did it for 30 years. I retired. Sam Lowe, who worked with me most of those 30 years, runs business now and very successful. He's a great organizer and great man too. And so it's been good to me, and it helps a lot of Texas kids get exposure that hadn't got exposure in the past. Like I said before, there's low Division Ones, D2s, D3s, JUCOs that benefited for the shootouts particularly, but also the scouting service. So it's been a real plus for the kids, and that was kind of my dream, to help promote kids that weren't necessarily being recruited because they just weren't getting the exposure.
Coach, I'll thank you again, because I feel like I'm one of those kids, or was one of those kids. 6'2.5" isn't that special. And the things that I brought to the court, I don't believe, even though you were kind early on, I always thought there were better players out there. And so you're right. The top players around, those are easy to see, easy to find, but it's that next layer that you were able to tap into and give guys like us just a platform to play and to be seen. And golly, just the legacy that you've led, it's incredible.
You did a very good job when you had the opportunity. You did a great job at Baylor. You had a great career there, and I know you're proud of what you've accomplished also.
So early on, with having to recruit the state of Texas, and I know you brought on some help over the years, but how busy were you? How many miles were you putting on your car trying to see everybody?
Well, I tell you, Southwest Airlines became kind of my private air show because I flew to San Antonio, flew to Houston, and very frequently, December every weekend, I was in Houston and going to tournaments, but going to summer tournaments around the state. But I put a lot of miles on my car also, but I saw about 200 ball games a year during the regular season. And I figured up not too long ago, counting summer leagues, summer tournaments, regular season games, regular tournaments during the regular season, I saw close to 8,000 high school basketball games during my career with Great American Shootout. But it was a lot of fun. Most of those tournaments were great times because you visit with coaches, you get to find out more information, the in-depth information on the players. And college coach really appreciated when he found out this kid is really a hard worker, great fundamental player. Just doesn't have that, as you mentioned, he's not the big kid. He may be a 5'11" point guard instead of a 6'4" point guard, but he has those intangibles that make him a winner. And some of these coaches that say, well, I can go with this 5'10", 5'11" point guard if he has those intangibles. And you wouldn't have known that had you not been at events with the college, with the high school coaches talking to them about their players and find out a little bit about their character. Sometimes the kid may be a great player, but lacks in character, doesn't want to practice hard, doesn't want to do his schoolwork and things like that. So, the in-depth information on kids that you hope will help them, but every now and then they need to help themselves too.
It's amazing just the vision that you had, in the late 80s to combine. I was trying to think of all the passions that you were able to combine by doing what you did. Relationship with coaches that obviously with TABC and all the experiences that you had in Texas, you had strong relationships that you wanted to continue. You love basketball, or else you wouldn't want to be in the gym as much as you just said you were. But then ultimately, you love helping young people achieve their dreams. And so it's just incredible that you're able to combine all of those areas into what you ended up doing.
Well, like I said, it was something I really enjoyed doing, had a passion for, and basketball has been very good to me through all these years.
You mentioned Sam, that's really helped to take over, and he's doing an amazing job. Well, Blue is right there with him. And I was able to see Blue a couple weeks ago, and Coach Blue can't talk about you without, you can just feel the emotion coming out of him. And I feel like there's so many coaches out there that I myself included, that when we think about you or talk about you with other coaches, it's just there's a smile on our face or a positive emotion that comes out. And so just so you've had a huge influence on those guys, especially Blue, in your time with him.
Well, those are two great guys. Like I said, Sam was with me for almost 30 years. He helped in the summers while he was still going to college at the University of Texas. And then when he graduated, his dad, who I'd known ever since we went to high school together, we played high school ball together, his dad told me, Sam really enjoys helping you in the summer. Do you think there's any way he can do some work for you? And I said, we'll try him for the summer, see if he likes it, see if I like it, and we'll see if it works. Like I say, he's with me for almost 30 years.
So he made the team. Is that what you're saying, Coach?
He made the team. Made the starting lineup, right. And Blue, he was a manager as Stephen F. Austin under Danny Casper. Coach Casper played for me in high school at Corpus Christi Carroll. And Coach Casper told me about how good a worker and how hard a worker and how much passion Blue has for coaching and being around the game of basketball. So he said he'd like to help out every now and then when he could. So I was able to get him a job in Irving as a teacher and as a part-time worker with Great American Shootout. And after a couple of years, he decided he was going to retire from teaching and join me full-time, which he did. So the last about 5 or 6 years, Sam and Blue were full time with me, and we had a fearsome threesome with that group.
Yeah, and I really feel like the authenticity that they show, their passion for helping out players to all, like you said before, also find their way. That has to come from you. What was the culture is a buzzword that everybody loves to talk about now, but really it's just the way that you try to do things, the way that you try to show up every day. What was the culture, maybe as a coach, but also that you carried over into Great American Shootouts that you try to create?
Well, I think the main culture is try to do everything right. I told college coaches, because there are scouting services around the country that are crooks, to be honest with you. They exploit the kids, and I told college coaches I want to do it right or I'm not going to do it at all. And I was fortunate. I had coaches like Gerald Myers at Texas Tech at that time, Dave Bliss, who was at SMU at that time, Pat Foster at the University of Houston. Those guys said, we'll do everything we can to get your name out there with other college coaches and tell them we know you're going to do it the right way. So the culture of doing it the right way. And I told Sam when he came on board, told Blue when he came on board, we're going to do things the right way. We may lose out on the team that we'd like to have in our shootout, but we're not going to do anything illegal against NC2A rules or against UIL rules. We're going to play by the rules, but we're going to put on a first-class event. We're going to do it the right way. So try to coach that way. My players, I felt like, understood from day one that we're going to try to play the game of basketball the way it's supposed to be played and do it the right way and play to the best of our ability. And hopefully most of the time we did that.
I would imagine looking and seeing how far it's come since you started in 1988, I would imagine doing it the right way is really the best way. It pays off because, like you said, you might have lost out on a couple of people that wanted maybe something extra, wanted something that wasn't within the rules, but you standing firm to those principles, it seemed to work out pretty well for you.
And the word got around, and summer coaches, those that wanted to have something added to their entry or whatever, they knew that nothing's going to happen. So they're going to do it either our way or they're not going to participate. So it worked out well for us. And once word gets out that way, people don't try to shortchange or don't try to go around the curve and try to do things that aren't right. So we feel very, very fortunate. We've been very blessed by doing it the right way. The long run it pays off, as you mentioned.
50 plus years of coaching or being around coaches in basketball, I'm sure you have just some incredible stories and some incredible relationships. But one that Blue mentioned to me, and also when I look back through some of the TABC things, it's mentioned in an article, was yours with Coach John Wooden. And as somebody that never had the opportunity to meet him, but if, as most coaches, put him up on that Mount Rushmore of coaches. Would you mind just speaking about your relationship with him and so maybe of some of your fond memories?
Well, the funny thing is, I say funny thing, the unusual thing is how I got to know Coach Wooden. I was coaching in Corpus. We were just won the district championship and getting ready to go into the playoffs. My first experience at a playoff as a coach. And I was calling different high school coaches that I knew, getting information on how they prepared their teams for the playoffs, the do's, the don'ts, and everything. And I was just really scratching my head. Who else could I call? Who else could I call? I thought, who has more experience and more success than John Wooden? So out of the clear blue, one afternoon before athletic period, I get on the phone, call information, Los Angeles men's basketball office. They give me the number, I call, phone rings, I hear the voice, Wooden speaking. He answered the phone, I would go, I just started kind of choking up here. I had to struggle to find words. Finally, I told him who I was, And our team had just won the district championship, get ready to go to the playoffs, and I wanted to know if he'd mind sharing a few ideas or words with me on what would be the best to help me prepare the team. And I told him I had a tape recorder, and if he didn't mind, I'd like to record it. He said, no, that'd be fine. So he started talking about his pyramid of success. And at that time, I was not familiar with his pyramid. And he basically told us, told me that success is peace of mind and knowing that you've done the best you're capable of doing. And I've had that recorded, our conversation, so I played it to the players. And it was almost like he was there in the gym when I played it to the players. They got so motivated and so fired up.
Wow.
I still get a little bit emotional, right? Even talking about it. But that spring, I read in a Sports Illustrated that he has camps out in California. Of course, camps at that time were not allowed in Texas. So I thought, well, I will contact him and see if I can work his camp. This time I got his secretary. I didn't get him, but the secretary referred me to the guy that directed his camp, Max Shapiro. So I called Max and told him who it was and that I had contacted Coach Wooden and all. He said, well, we just use California coaches in our camps, but it sounded like you had a pretty good, successful year. We had gone to the Final Four that year. And he said, we'll take you on a 1-week trial. And I said, that'd be great. I'd be out there. So I went out 1 week. During that first week, they announced that one of the coaches supposed to work the next week is not going to be able to work. Did anyone want to work next week? Well, my hand shot up right away. I said, I'll work next week. Same thing happened the second week. So I went on a 1-week trial and ended up working 3 weeks of camps. And during that time, I really got to know Coach Wooden. And so every summer for the next 18 years, I worked his camps at least for 2 weeks, if not 3 weeks, and really got to know he. And I took my wife out, and she got to know Nell real well. And then when our daughters were born, they went out there, and other coaches would bring their families, and it became really a family affair. And Don Showalter, who's with USA Basketball now, he and his family became good friends of ours, and we still stay in contact with each other all these years. But Coach Wooden was always so modest. We were there at Cal Lutheran most of the time, sometimes at Point Loma down in San Diego, sometimes at Pepperdine, one time at UCLA, but most of the time at Cal Lutheran. And during that era is when the Cowboys were at Cal Lutheran. And so that was the Tom Landry era, and so they stayed on the Cal Lutheran campus just like we did. So we'd see them around campus, eat the same cafeteria with them, and it was just a great experience. But Coach Wooden and Coach Landry were two from the same mold. Very modest, very humble, and when those two sat down at a table together, you fought to try to sit at the same table with them and listen to those two men talk. They were just awesome individuals. And I tell people, all of them know how great a coach he was, but not as many have the opportunity like I had to know how great a person he was. So Coach Wooden was very special to me and to my family, and I'm very honored to have had the opportunity to really get to know him as a man, even more so than as a coach.
Thank you for sharing that story. Incredible. There's a couple takeaways that I have from it. I think that might help coaches. One, doesn't matter how long you do it and how much success you have or what level you're at, always be willing to answer the phone to help out coaches that have questions, because that's really impressive that he answered your call and then gave you advice and then you guys created this friendship. And then the second thing is you as a younger coach having, I would really just say the guts to call so many different people, but someone at that level to ask for advice. But that mentality that you have, I imagine, is what made you really good as a coach. So those are two great takeaways I got from that.
Well, I probably pushed the envelope pretty far when I decided I was going to call Coach Wood, but I really felt like I was going to do everything I could to help my team be as successful as they could be. And we were very fortunate. We did, like I say, make it to the Final Four and played Houston Wheatley with Eddie Owens in that group that averaged 111 points a game.
How'd that game go, Coach?
We held them. With 3 minutes to go, we're 3 points down, shooting 1-1. Unfortunately, we missed the front end. They come down, scored in their press. They got another layup, and the next thing we know, we go from 3 down to 10 down. They end up beating us 70-60, but we held them 41 points under their normal average. We didn't stall, but we did play controlled tempo game. That was the only way you felt like we could play Wheatley, but they were a great team. Coach, one of the greatest in Texas history, I believe.
That number right there, you said 111?
Yes.
To hold the team down 41 points, you're doing something unique, something special for sure.
Well, like I said, we didn't stall, but we sure controlled tempo. We tried to get them out of their rhythm, and their press was awesome, and we felt like if we tried to play an up-tempo game with them, that their press would end up showing up because they would get some easy buckets in an up-tempo game. They relied on getting steals, getting turnovers, getting easy buckets off the press, and we didn't want it to turn into that type of a game.
So the almost 25-year relationship that you and I have had, partly me as a player and then as a coach, I've always enjoyed our conversations, but I don't think I've ever talked to you about your high school coaching time. So I love just, if it's hard to describe a 26-year career, but what were you like as a high school coach? What was your style? What standards did you have for your teams? I'd love to hear about that.
Well, as you could talk with some of my former players that are now coaching, emphasis is always on defense and being fundamentally sound on both the offensive and defensive end of the court. I feel like if you were defensively sound and played good, solid, primarily man-to-man defense, that you were in ball games. And if you were fundamentally sound on both ends of the court, then you had a chance with your defense to win ball games that otherwise maybe you wouldn't win. And we'd run the fast break, but it's a controlled fast break. It wasn't come down the floor and jack it. We had numbers, we'd take the shot. If we didn't have numbers, we wouldn't. And if we didn't have the numbers, we'd set up and run our offense. And a little bit different then than maybe today was we were a little bit more patient on offense. Although that year that we went to the state Final Four, we averaged almost 70 points a game and gave up less than 50. So we weren't.
That's a pretty good pace, Coach.
And this was back in the early 70s when some scoring wasn't as high as it was today or is today. But we like to play that style of ball. Fundamentally sound, tough, hard-nosed defense. And I get a kick out of Coach Beard at Texas. Coach played until he moved to Houston, played for me at Irving High. And he still kids about his having to get in a defensive stance when he was a freshman, particularly. It's kind of a shock for him. But he and Coach Casper are two former players of mine that I'm really proud of that played that good, hard-nosed defense. But defense, fundamentals, and being patient. If you don't have a good shot, working for the good shot was kind of my style of play.
I didn't know that he played for you. That's incredible. Just another story there. Coach, how did you create, because was there a three-point line at that point with the team that averaged 70?
No, the three-point line didn't come in until I believe it was 1986, and this was 1973.
So that might have even been, 76, 77 points at that point. Like with that, that's incredible.
It might have been, but then again, it depends on who has the ball, right?
That's right.
If it's Matt Saban, might let him shoot. If it's Bracy Wright, might let him shoot. But
That's a smart decision right there. That's smart. Coach, how did you help to get your team, especially offensively, playing faster?
well, like I said, we shot when we had the numbers on the break, and if we did, we'd sit and run our offense. Execution in our offense is really important. I know most people run the motion game today, but we ran a lot of the UCLA stuff in our high post offense. We ran out of a high-low some of the time. We ran out of a single post some of the time, depending on our personnel. But I like a up-tempo game if it's under control. You know, like I say, putting up bad shots or non-shooters putting up shots. I didn't go for that. And players pretty well knew their roles, and they did a good job most of the time of playing those roles.
As a high school coach, moving into the scouting service, being able to watch teams and styles over the last 40 or 50 years, what are some of the big, I don't know, trends or movements that you've seen? How have players changed, styles changed? Do you still like the game where it is today, or are some things that that you miss from a few decades ago?
I think the game has changed. I think players are more athletic today than they were 30, 40 years ago. Part of that is through training. They have the fitness, goes back to clinics like Tabc puts on and camps that people put on. They emphasize how to train, how to lift weights. We did when I was playing, and even early in my coaching career, we were totally against weights, messing up your shot.
Wow. Yeah.
And today, of course, people have a strong off-season weight program, and a lot of them even an endurance season weight program. So I don't think all colleges do it in season weight program, but even quite a few of the high school programs I know do a lot with the weight program. But I really think that fundamentally the game isn't quite as fundamental today as it was 15, 20, 30 years ago. I think there's more emphasis on keeping players happy. And players want to be happy if they can shoot the ball and go up and down the floor in a hurry. But that's, you know, it's just different styles. I'm still kind of the old school mindset. It was good to me, and so I kind of favor that type of play. But a good up-tempo game with good shots being taken and still defense being played, I have no problem with it being fast-paced. But when it gets where it is, some of these summer games, to be honest with you, we see them in our shootouts. Some of these summer games are nothing but just jacking up shots all over the floor. Non-shooters taking bad shots, shooters forcing shots, and I don't like that at all. So once again, it has to be under control in an up-tempo game for me to really enjoy an up-tempo game.
That's a really good point, though. I think we can't let that balance get out of whack between wanting the players to enjoy the style that they play. And you're right. Like, everybody loves shooting. You're right on the money there. But can we teach a style of play that they enjoy, but there's still the team aspect where it's five guys working together, moving the ball in unison to create the best shot each possession? But it can go, in my opinion, almost too far either way, especially with everybody needs to be happy. So there's no control, no discipline.
Well, team play is still the name of the game. Basketball is a team game. It's five guys working together as one, or five gals working together as one. And if you have that, you have a chance to be successful. But once again, it is a team game, and once you get to where it's individual players going one-on-one, to be honest with you, that's what I do not like about the pro game. Great athletes, great shooters, great ball handlers, although most of them get away with traveling and palming most of the time. But anyway, I won't take anything away from their ability because they're very, very talented. But I still feel like that you can't play one-on-one and be a successful team. You can't, put up bad shots, or you can't have non-shooters taking shots and things of
Yeah.
that nature.
I think a good example of what you're talking about is the Golden State Warriors. They have amazing individuals, but man, they really work together. The ball moves. Steph Curry just had a video come out where he's talking about the ball being a grenade in your hands, where you either have to shoot it, and if you can't, you got to get rid of it. You got to move it. But then in Dallas, we have Luka, who dribbles the ball every time down. He does pass the ball well, but the whole offense runs through him. But he's also that good. So I think at the pro level, the Golden State Warriors may be the best example, or one of the best examples of what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I enjoy watching Golden State play because of exactly what you said. In the old times, the Boston Celtics were like that. I enjoyed
Yes.
them play because,
And then the Spurs too, a little bit after them. Yep.
exactly. But it's still, as we both said, it's a team game, and five guys working together as one. It's a pleasure to watch when they play like that.
I would imagine that very few high school coaches will have the opportunity to be in the Texas High School Basketball Hall of Fame. And I just can't think of somebody more deserving than you. What was it like to be inducted? And I don't have the date, but when you were.
Well, it was a tremendous honor. First of all, it took a lot of people. But primarily, it was the coaches. Primarily, it was the players, but assistant coaches also played a very integral part of that. But I've been very blessed. I told people from the get-go that my parents, who immigrated from Austria right before World War II started, my dad was a medical doctor who gave up his medical practice to seek freedom in America, started all over again. And he was very successful as a doctor in West Texas. But for him to be able to succeed and go through what he went through, give me the opportunity to be a coach. He never tried to pressure me into doing anything other than what I wanted to do. So started with my parents. I've been very, very blessed. And I felt like I could do anything I set my mind to if I just, worked hard at it. And that's kind of what being in the Texas High School Basketball Hall of Fame was. I worked hard, but again, I had a lot of players that did a lot to make my career in coaching very successful, and still stay in touch with many of them. In fact, that 73 team, we're going to have a 50th reunion, and going to be in Corpus during the regular basketball season this year. We're going to have most of those players, fortunately, are still living, including myself. And we're going to meet and have a 50th reunion of that 73 Final Four team. But to answer your question on what it meant to me, it meant all those things that I just mentioned, because I've been very, very blessed, starting with my parents, my high school coach, Bill Lyons, and then the opportunity I got being a grad assistant at UT Arlington, as it's called now. And that in turn led me to the head coaching job at 27 in Corpus that I wouldn't have normally been able to get had it not been for Barry Dowd and what he did for me. But I've just been very, very fortunate. Like I say, coaches, assistant coaches, friendships with people like Tommy Thomas, who did a lot to help me with my career as far as the Great American Shootouts are concerned. I remember him telling me one time that he was playing Irving MacArthur, and he said, "I got two freshmen you need to watch." And I said, "Really? Who are they?" He said, "Bracy Wright and Darren Williams." He was right.
He was right.
And so anyway, he would tell me about players he saw, players he had. Those were two top ones, along with Matt Saban. He told me about Matt too. He did. So it's just kind of a combination of all those things together that it felt like I could say thank you to all those people that helped all that become possible.
Coach, before I let you go, I want to take you through the speed round. These are quick questions. First thing that pops in your head. Really easy questions. You ready?
All right.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Chocolate.
Best basketball movie of all time?
Hoosiers.
No hesitation there. For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
No shot clock.
How come, Coach?
I think it works against teams that are not quite as talented as their opponents would be, and not that they would stall, but most teams get off a shot less than 30 seconds anyway. And I would feel like it takes away that opportunity that some of the lesser talented teams would have of winning against more talented teams.
That makes sense. Your favorite holiday?
Christmas.
In basketball, this is tough, Coach. In basketball, who is the greatest player of all time?
Bill Russell.
That's a good one. Last one, Coach. When you were coaching, how many cups of coffee did you drink per day?
0 and still 0. I don't drink coffee.
No coffee, Coach?
No. Didn't take anything, and low key.
That's right. Just passion for the game, passion for players. That's all you needed.
That's right.
Coach, this has been I think one of the highlights for me is getting to have this time with you. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for everything that you've done for coaches over the years, everything you've done for Texas or high school basketball, and everything you've done for players, for guys like me that had huge dreams, but I just don't think would have achieved what they could without you. And just humbled and honored to have this time with you, Coach.
Well, you're very kind, Matt. I appreciate it very much. And thank you very much for thinking of me and inviting me to be on the show with you. And I know you've been very successful as a coach yourself, and look for many more years of success on your part.
Thanks, Coach. Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.